Now let's talk about Sakamoto Days Chapter 213 titled Resistance and Chapter 214 titled Lost Child. Let's get started. When Shin gave the command to aim their guns at the ground and fire all their bullets, the message was amplified through the tower's satellites. The radio waves transmitted the signal, reaching a large number of people. As a result, they all readied their guns and fired at the ground. Everyone affected by the signal followed the command. They were all confused, wondering what had just happened. One of them said it felt like a voice told him to shoot the ground, and the person beside him agreed. Even those inside trains or outside on the streets followed the instruction. Asakura was thrilled that it actually worked. However, it was clear that using his ability to such an extent had a serious effect on Shin. He started to have a nosebleed. Asakura quickly approached him and asked if he was okay, growing worried by how bad his condition looked. Shin responded that he was fine. What mattered was that they accomplished their goal. When asked how many people he thought received the message, Asakura answered that he believed it reached the entire area, and that was more than enough. Suddenly, Shin stood up and jumped. There was no time to rest, he said. He invited them to move on to the next location. Asakura then recalled when Shin was just a kid. Who would have thought that Brat would grow into someone so reliable? Kashima agreed, saying that Shin had become a thorn in the enemy's throat. Asakura commented on how arrogant that sounded. Meanwhile, in the building where X was, someone reported to him that there had been an abnormal spike in the rate of civilians using their weapons. X was shocked by this. The man added that it looked like someone was pushing them to shoot without any aim. X began to suspect that Sakamoto was behind this, sabotaging his plans. However, the one truly responsible was Shin. In the next scene, Shin used his ability again, this time to command everyone at the next location to fire all their bullets into the ground. The people had no choice but to follow, even if they didn't want to. They were all bewildered by what was happening, calling it incredibly strange. Shin was pleased, now that even Naruma had been cleared. Nearby, Boiled, Kendaka, and Heisuke witnessed what was going on and were shocked. They thought what he did was insane. As they ran, they wondered how he managed to pull it off. Shin explained that it seemed like people were picking up his superwave power and it was spreading. Although, he admitted that he didn't fully understand how it was happening yet. Heisuke was deep in thought when Shin mentioned the waves. He said that if they could transmit it from a tall enough tower, they might be able to cover all of Japan in one go. Shin turned to look at him, now seriously considering the idea of a very tall tower. Heisuke then suggested the Sky Tower. That stunned everyone. Still, Kashima said they might as well try it. Asakura thought for a moment and said they'd just need a bit of preparation, but in theory, it seemed possible. However, he also warned that they couldn't predict what kind of effect something that large would have on Shin's brain. Shin replied that they shouldn't worry about him and should just do it. Asakura angrily asked Shin to listen to him carefully. But Shin argued that maybe his power existed specifically for this very day, and it was clear he was fired up. Asakura didn't say anything back, while Boiled commented that Shin was truly hard-boiled. They made their way straight to the Sky Tower, jumping over the automated gate to get inside. Some men chased after them, yelling at them to stop. They warned that if they didn't, they'd be taken down. Heisuke was puzzled, wondering why there were people from JMI there. Kendaka said he would handle them. He told the others to go on ahead to the top. The group began ascending, and once they reached a high enough level, Heisuke swallowed nervously, saying they were already incredibly high up. Asakura replied, of course, they were trying to send waves across all of Japan. Shin urged them to hurry, as there was no time to waste. Suddenly, Shin heard something that made him turn and grow alarmed. A jet was heading straight in their direction. It crashed into the Sky Tower, damaging a major part of the structure. The top portion was severed and came crashing down. Fortunately, it fell toward a body of water below. One member of the group was seen dangling from the edge of the tower. Turns out, it was Shin, trying to pull himself up. He noticed that Boiled and Asakura were buried under the wreckage and called out to them. As Shin pulled himself up, X was suddenly standing right in front of him. Shin panicked when he saw him there. X remarked that Shin's actions were starting to resemble Sakamoto's style more and more. He told himself it was all or nothing now, especially since there was a river below them. Shin activated his ability on him. He successfully gave X a command to kick the steel beam, which caused both of them to fall. X didn't expect that, but he wasn't letting Shin get away. He caught him using his sword whip and yanked him back. He flung Shin straight through the tower's glass wall. Inside, X pointed a gun at him. He said that these guns represented his revenge against the world. That's why he told Shin not to get in the way of his plans. Sitting on the floor, Shin realized that from overusing his ability, his body wasn't responding anymore. X was ready to shoot and bid him farewell. So Shin thought to himself what he should do now. When X pulled the trigger, the gun didn't fire, something that shocked both him and Shin. He hadn't expected that at all. It turned out to be thanks to Natsuki. The scene shifted to where Natsuki was, busy on his computer alongside his brother Mafuyu, as well as Torimaru, Amane, and Kaji. When the issued guns were fired by the public, they were all surprised to find that they didn't work. In a nearby park, people who were about to shoot each other paused and questioned if the guns had shut down or malfunctioned. One of them even commented that the government's policies were incredibly careless. Back to Natsuki. He had successfully hacked the weapon system by tracking their electronic chips and disabling all the guns across Japan. Torimaru was impressed that he could pull it off. Truthfully, it should have been impossible unless the signal transmission center had been damaged. Torimaru jokingly said maybe the sky tree had been smashed. But Amane started thinking seriously about that possibility. They began to suspect that there were others out there fighting too, not just them. Back to Shin. He couldn't believe he had been saved. He felt incredibly lucky, like the bullet had gotten stuck mid-fire. X looked at the gun in his hand, then tossed it aside in frustration. Instead, he drew Takamura's katana and declared that nothing beats the old-fashioned way of killing. Back to Natsuki. He stated that, for now, all the guns they had distributed were nothing more than useless junk. The people were confused about what had just happened, realizing that the guns they were holding no longer worked. A child observing the scene questioned what was happening. Some others also noticed that the sound of gunfire had completely stopped. The scene then shifted to Granny Mia, who remarked that everything had gone quiet now. Around her were several men lying unconscious on the ground, all struck down by her acupuncture needles. It was revealed that Lu and Wutong were with her, collecting guns from the people. They grew curious and asked if everyone had simply run out of ammo. Word about the incident quickly spread. A news reporter announced that breaking news had just come in. None of the distributed firearms under the legalization policy were functioning anymore. Experts suspected it was a hacking operation carried out by an unidentified group. The news rapidly trended across social media. As a result, some people felt reassured, thinking the streets were now safe. A mother even thought that maybe it was finally okay for her to go outside and shop for their dinner. Back to X, he asked Shin if they were the ones responsible for what happened. Shin replied that he didn't know. In his mind, he truly had no idea what was going on and assumed the guns had just jammed. But he started to suspect that Saba might have something to do with it. In any case, returning to their current situation, X attacked again with his sword whip. When he swung it, the glass wall of the tower they were in shattered. X admitted that he now considered them a threat. He regretted not finishing them back when they were still in the Kanto branch. Shin smiled and said it sure took X long enough to realize that. Still, he became uneasy, knowing he was now contending with the big boss himself. But it was something he had to do. He recalled Nagumo's advice. When facing X, it was crucial not to show even a hint of bloodlust, or it could trigger the persona of Mr. Takamura. Once again, X took his stance and used his weapon, which made Shin uneasy. X targeted him with the sword whip, forcing Shin to desperately dodge. Even without the Mr. Takamura persona, X alone was already an overwhelming opponent. As Shin dodged, he suddenly noticed a fighter jet seat nearby. He figured it might have fallen there along with the rubble from above. X charged at him again, and with the situation turning into do or die, Shin decided to sit in the seat and pull something from underneath. As a result, the mechanism activated and the ejector seat launched out of the tower, taking Shin and X with it. X couldn't believe he had actually triggered the ejector seat. It reminded him even more of Sakamoto and his insane improvisations. The two of them were falling from above, but X didn't let up. He kept attacking midair. People on the floor below noticed them falling outside the window. X still had his weapon in hand, and Shin was directly beneath him. X readied his whip to strike again, but before he could land the blow, they crashed straight into a massive aquarium. People outside were startled. The two of them had smashed through the ceiling and landed directly in the giant fish tank inside, drawing the attention of a massive crowd. Shin couldn't believe they ended up in such a place. For a moment, he thought it might have saved him. But then he grew concerned because there were far too many civilians around for a fight to break out here. Meanwhile, X paused when he noticed the aquarium. A memory came flooding back. He recalled a conversation he had with Ryan during a trip. Ryan had asked if he'd ever been to an aquarium. X said no and asked why. Ryan shared that she wanted to go and thought it would be fun to see the giant, colorful tanks. While underwater, X looked somber as he took in the sight of the aquarium and the people inside. Quietly observing, he saw an image of Ryan in the crowd, smiling at him. From a distance, Shin watched, confused by what was happening. X had suddenly gone completely silent. But then Shin noticed something approaching X from behind, a shark. As it lunged forward, about to bite him, X snapped back to his senses. He struck, shattering the giant fish tank using Takamura's ultra-sharp katana. The water burst out and swept everyone away. Lying on the ground, Shin thought to himself that he had forgotten. Bloodlust didn't only come from people. Because of the incident, the aquarium was shut down. An announcement was made, thanking visitors for coming. At the same time, a missing child was reported. Meanwhile, the persona of Mr. Takamura had once again taken over X. He murmured quietly to himself, his weapon still embedded in the shark that had just tried to attack.